And the regime in Tehran is said to be probably weaker than it has ever been as its economy collapses and public protests grow. Secretary of State Marco Rubio testified that the Iranian leadership is unable to address the core complaints of the people and have also blamed the government's spending on terrorism over domestic welfare. Rubio's assessment aligns with President Trump's recent announcement of a massive armada heading to Iran. Meanwhile, at least 6,126 protesters have been killed, with the death toll still rising according to local human rights authorities. The US remains cautious, although military action could be needed if the situation worsens. Furthermore, Iran's leadership has dismissed the US move, asserting it will defend itself if provoked. Let's listen into what Rubio had to say.
In the thousands for certain. And look, I think regimes, including that one in Iran, have learned that when you start shooting people in the head with snipers, it's effective. I mean, it works, and they've done it, and it's horrifying. And that's what we've seen. That regime is probably weaker than it has ever been. And the core problem they face, unlike the protests you saw in the past on some other topics, is that they don't have a way to address the core complaints of the protesters, which is that their economy is in collapse. And the reason why there's economies in collapse is because they spend all their money and all their resources building weapons and sponsoring terrorist groups around the world instead of reinvesting it back into their society. And as a result, have taken on massive global sanctions, which has isolated their economy and their country. And so that's what the Iranian people are demanding, is that they stop doing that and start caring about them and get these sanctions off them. And this regime is unwilling to do it. So the core challenge is the protests may have ebbed, but they will spark up again in the future, because this regime, unless they are willing to change and or leave, have no way of addressing the legitimate and consistent complaints of the people of Iran who deserve better.
Spencer Critchley joins us once again. Spencer, of course, protests have reportedly died down now, but that internet blackout is still very much present, and reportedly over 6,000 people have been killed. Some organizations even reporting as high as 20,000. However, we simply do not know. But it has been a few weeks now since Donald Trump put that Truth Social post out saying that urging Iranian people to take over their institutions, saying, quote unquote, help is on the way. That armada, so-called armada, which Donald Trump is talking about, is that the help which the Americans have sent? And do you think the Iranian people would benefit from an American intervention here?
And again, we have this critical trust deficit, and it's just so terrible to see an international situation where the word of the United States is worth about as much as the word of the Iranian mullahs or the word of Hamas. That's perhaps an overstatement a little bit there, but we essentially have no reason to trust Hamas. We have no reason to trust Iran, and we've got vanishingly little reason to trust the Trump administration. It was grossly and childishly irresponsible of Donald Trump to promise help in this impulsive social media post. He calls his social media network Truth Social. I think it'd be more accurately referred to as Ministry of Truth Social, in a nod to George Orwell. But to do something like that, and I'm sure that many Iranians believed him and exposed themselves to danger, and who knows how many of them may have been maimed or killed because of that. And it was a moment's impulse, and and his whole career is one momentary impulse after another, behaving at this childish level. I often caution people, I think it's a big mistake to dignify Donald Trump with the assumption that there's some kind of strategy at work here. I think the only thing that drives his decision-making is his personal psychology, which is extremely disordered and seems to still be carrying trauma from early childhood, which has arrested his development at early childhood. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. And I'm joined by, I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist, but a great many psychologists and psychiatrists share that opinion of his thinking, such as it is. So whether this is help for the Iranians, who knows? I mean, It could just be a performative gesture. It could be one of many attempts to distract Americans' attention from the Epstein files. It could be just Trump, got a wild idea in the middle of the night and decided it'd be great to send an armada to Iran, and that would really make him look really tough. But heaven knows what kind of thinking has gone through as to what happens next. One of the most crucial questions in any strategy, and hopefully one of the first questions. Okay, this looks great, but what happens next? And that's a question that Trump literally seems incapable of considering, and his answer when pressed is, as you may have noticed, we'll see what happens.
And Spencer, of course, Donald Trump campaigned on a presidency of not dragging America into forever wars. Of course, we've seen 2026 is already quite the year where Donald Trump hasn't shied away from intervention. We have midterms coming up at the end of this year. How well is Donald Trump's foreign policy going down with the American people?
Not well. He is underwater on every major issue. He had been very strong, as you probably know, on immigration, very strong on the question of being seen as a strong and effective leader on the world stage, very strong on leadership of the economy, very strong on reducing crime, very strong on ending America's involvement in wars in other countries and restoring peace. And on all of those, he's dropped by tens of percentage points and is well under 50%. He's in many cases under 40%, in the 30s on all of these issues, and his overall approval rating is down in the 30s. And I know from my experience in American politics, and many others will tell you the same thing, that once you get down to the 30s in terms of your support in polls or your ability to draw votes, you're essentially dealing with the floor of random noise in politics, because there have been elections where people have voted for candidates who had died many months before Election Day. And you can always find 30 to 35% of a population that will vote for just about anything. So I would say today, at least, Donald Trump is in extremely serious political trouble. Statistically, he's being supported essentially by the noise floor of politics.
Spencer Critchley, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. It's a pleasure.